Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You ready to become market research pros?
Always ready to dive into some new business insights.
Well, today we're taking all our cues from one super insightful article on Medium.
Oh, yeah, I read that one. It's called How to Conduct Market Research Like a Pro.
Exactly. I tried it published just this month.
So, definitely a fresh perspective.
For sure. And it covers a ton of ground. We're talking everything from defining your objectives to,
Crafting those killer surveys,
yeah, to even getting a little sneaky with the competition,
ethically, of course.
always ethically. But that competitive analysis is definitely something to look forward to.
For sure. Can't wait to dig into that.
But first things first, we've got to start with the foundation.
The why behind it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the article kicks off with this idea that aimless research is basically like setting sail without a map.
Ooh, I love that analogy.
Right. You're just drifting around hoping to bump into something useful.
And that's a recipe for a shipwreck every time.
It is. And so many of us have been there. You gather tons of data, but then you're like, okay, now what?
Totally. The author actually shares a story about drowning in irrelevant data early in their career.
Yes.
It's a classic mistake.
It is. And the reason it happens so often is because people skip that crucial first step of defining their objectives.
And why?
The why. Exactly. So
Mhm.
how do we avoid falling into that trap?
By getting crystal clear on our goals before we even think about surveys or focus groups.
So it all starts with a simple question.
Why am I doing this research?
What am I actually trying to figure out?
Like, are you trying to understand what your customers are struggling with?
Are you trying to find the sweet spot for your pricing?
Or maybe you're trying to see how you stack up against the competition.
All great questions. And once you know the answers,
Then you can start gathering the right information.
and not just a whole bunch of random data.
That's going to leave you more confused than when you started.
Totally. So once you've got that clear objective in mind,
Then it's time to choose the right research methods.
and the article breaks it down into two main categories.
Primary research and secondary research.
Now, for those who need a quick refresher,
Primary research is all about going straight to the source.
talking to your target audience directly.
Think surveys, interviews, focus groups,
You're getting that fresh-hand data.
tailored to your specific needs.
Exactly. Now, secondary research is a little different.
It's more about tapping into existing knowledge.
So think reports, study analyses that have already been done.
It's a great way to understand broader market trends to see how your findings fit into the bigger picture.
And what I love about the article is that it emphasizes using both types of research,
Yeah, getting that combined perspective is so powerful.
because you're not just getting the inside scoop.
You're also getting that big picture validation.
For sure. So let's say you're launching a new line of eco-friendly shoes.
Okay, love it.
Your primary research might involve talking to potential customers about what they're looking for in sustainable footwear.
Their needs, their preferences, maybe what they're willing to pay.
Exactly. And then you could back that up with secondary research
Like reports on the sustainable fashion market
to see if there's actually a growing demand for this type of product,
to understand the trends, the growth potential.
and to make sure your findings are aligned with what's happening in the market as a whole.
It's all about getting that well-rounded view.
Which brings us to one of my favorite research methods: surveys.
Ah, yes, the classic survey.
They're just so effective for gathering quantifiable data that you can actually use to make decisions.
But there's an art to crafting a survey that actually gets you the information you need.
Because we've all seen those surveys that are way too long.
Or they ask questions that are confusing or leading.
And the article has some great tips for avoiding those pitfalls.
One thing that really stood out to me was the advice to keep surveys concise.
Because no one wants to spend an hour filling out a survey.
And the shorter it is, the more likely people are to actually complete it.
Plus, if you're respecting people's time,
They're more likely to give you thoughtful answers.
and the author actually shares a story about a super successful survey they ran.
Oh, yeah. What was that one?
They just asked people to rank product features in order of importance.
So simple, but so effective.
And the results directly shaped their product development roadmap.
It just shows you that sometimes keeping it simple is the best approach.
Absolutely. Now, another thing they emphasize is the importance of asking clear, unbiased questions.
Because a leading question can completely skew your results.
If you're already pushing people towards a certain answer, you're not going to get genuine insights.
You're just going to get what you want to hear.
Exactly. And the article also recommends using a mix of multiple choice and open-ended questions,
Oh, that's a good tip.
because multiple choice makes data analysis a breeze.
But those open-ended questions can really unlock those deeper, more nuanced insights.
It's like getting the best of both worlds.
The quantitative and the qualitative.
Exactly. And speaking of qualitative data,
Sometimes you need to go beyond those broad stripes and really get into the why behind people's choices.
and that's where focus groups and interviews come in.
Ah, yes, the deep dive.
Exactly, because they let you explore those thoughts, feelings, and motivations that you just can't capture with a multiple choice question.
You can ask follow-up questions, you can dig into those interesting tangents.
You can really understand what makes your audience tick.
And that kind of insight is pure gold when you're trying to connect with your customers on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And the article actually has some great advice on running successful focus groups and interviews,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
like having a list of questions to keep things on track.
But also allowing for some flexibility in the conversation.
You want to create that comfortable environment where people feel safe to share their honest opinions.
And sometimes those off-script moments are where the real magic happens.
Totally. And the author actually mentions how just a few early interviews completely changed their understanding of customer motivations,
They were getting insights that simply wouldn't have surfaced in a survey.
which just goes to show you the power of those deeper conversations.
And the importance of choosing the right research methods for your specific needs.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of primary and secondary research,
The Foundations of Market Research 101.
but in today's digital world, there's a whole other layer to this.
Oh, yeah. The world of online tools and analytics.
And let's be real, these could be total game changers.
I mean, can you imagine trying to do all this manually?
I don't even want to think about it.
Spreadsheets for days.
So let's start with a big one, Google Trends.
Ah, yes. The oracle of search.
What's not to love about Google Trends?
I mean, it's like a window into what the world is searching for.
You can see trending topics. You can compare the popularity of different keywords.
You can even track interest over time.
It's incredible for validating ideas, for understanding consumer interest.
And even for spotting emerging trends before they become mainstream.
Imagine you're thinking about launching a new product.
Okay.
You could hop over to Google Trends and see if there's actually growing demand for that type of product.
That's data-driven decision-making at its best.
Exactly. Now, another set of tools that I find incredibly useful are social media listening tools.
Like Hootsuite or Brandwatch.
Exactly. You can track brand mentions, monitor competitor activity, basically keep tabs on all the conversations happening online around your industry,
It's like having a virtual focus group running 24/7.
but without the hassle of actually organizing one.
And the article shares this great story about how social media listening actually saved the author from wasting time on a feature that no one was really asking for.
Really?
Yeah, they were able to shift their focus to something much more valuable based on what people were saying online.
It just shows you the power of listening to what people are actually saying.
Sometimes those unsolicited opinions are the most valuable ones.
For sure. Now, while we're talking about listening, let's not forget about website analytics.
Ah, yes. The treasure trove of user behavior data.
Tools like Google Analytics give you an incredible amount of information about how people are interacting with your website.
It's like having a map of your website's most popular destinations.
You can see which pages people are visiting, how long they're staying, where they're coming from, what they're clicking on,
And all of that information is pure gold for optimizing your website
for improving user experience.
and even for tailoring your marketing messages.
So we've covered a lot in this first part. We've talked about setting clear objectives, exploring different research methods like surveys and focus groups.
And even diving into the world of online tools and analytics.
But don't worry, we're just getting started.
Oh, there's so much more to uncover.
Stay tuned, because next we're going to tackle some really interesting stuff.
Like how to spy on your competition, ethically, of course.
And how to turn all this data into actionable insights.
So grab your detective hats and your thinking caps.
And get ready for part 2.
Can't wait.
We'll be right back.
You know, one of the things that I really loved about this article was how much it emphasized competitive analysis.
Oh yeah, me too. It's so easy to get caught up in your own little world.
Right. You're so focused on your own business that you forget to look around and see what everyone else is doing.
But sometimes the best ideas come from seeing what your competitors are up to.
Totally. It's like they've done some of the research for you.
Exactly. So the article lays out this really practical approach to competitive analysis,
And it all starts with identifying your top competitors.
which might sound simple, but it can actually be a little tricky.
Yeah, because you've got your direct competitors.
The ones who are offering basically the same products or services as you.
Right. Like, if you're running a vegan bakery, your direct competitors are the other vegan bakeries in town.
Exactly. But then you've also got your indirect competitors.
Ones who might not be exactly the same as you.
But they're still vying for the same customer's attention and dollars.
So for that vegan bakery, an indirect competitor might be a regular bakery that happens to have a few vegan options.
Or even a health food store that sells vegan treats.
Exactly. It's about understanding the bigger picture of who else is trying to appeal to your target audience.
So once you've got your list of key competitors,
Time to put on your detective hat.
and do some digging.
You want to look at everything.
Their product offerings, their prices, how they market themselves.
What their customers are saying online, their social media presence.
The whole 9 yards.
And one of my favorite tips from the article was to look for areas where your competitors might be dropping the ball.
Because those weaknesses can become your unique selling points.
It's so true. Like, let's say a competitor has amazing products, but their customer service is terrible.
That's your chance to shine.
You can build a reputation for having the best customer service in the industry.
And really stand out from the crowd.
Or maybe their pricing is super confusing.
You can swoop in with a simple, transparent pricing structure.
And win over customers who value clarity and ease.
And the author actually shares a story about how they analyzed a competitor who's getting rave reviews for customer service.
Oh yeah, but their pricing model was a total mess.
Exactly. So they took that feedback to heart,
And made sure their own pricing was crystal clear.
which totally resonated with their customers.
It just shows you how paying attention to your competition can give you a real edge.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about another aspect of market research that I find fascinating.
What's that?
Observational research.
Ooh, yes. This is where we get to be flies on the wall.
Exactly. Just observing how people behave in the real world
Seeing how they interact with products or services in their natural environment.
without any prompting or influence.
It's all about capturing those raw, unfiltered behaviors.
That can tell you so much about what works and what doesn't.
And the article highlights two big benefits of observational research.
The first is those natural, unfiltered insights.
You're not relying on people's memories or asking them to explain their actions.
You're just watching how they behave in the wild.
It's like the difference between watching a documentary and conducting an interview.
You get a much more authentic view with observation
And the second benefit is that you might uncover those hidden pain points,
that people might not even realize they have.
or wouldn't think to mention in a survey.
Sometimes people don't even know they're having a frustrating experience until you see it firsthand.
Like maybe they're struggling to navigate a website or find a specific product in a store.
Their body language or their facial expressions can tell you so much.
And the author gives a great example of this.
They were watching people use a demo video for their product.
And they noticed a lot of users getting stuck at a certain point.
So they made a few small tweaks to the video based on what they observed.
And it actually led to a significant increase in conversion rates.
That's amazing.
It just shows that sometimes the simplest changes can make a huge difference.
And all it takes is paying close attention.
And you don't need fancy equipment or a team of researchers to do this.
You can observe customer behavior in your own store at your competitor's location.
Or even online by analyzing user behavior on your website or social media.
So we've talked about gathering data through surveys and interviews.
We have explored the world of online tools and analytics.
We've even talked about the power of competitive analysis and observational research.
But gathering data is only half the battle.
What do we do with all this information once we have it?
That's the million-dollar question.
And it can feel a little overwhelming.
You've got spreadsheets full of numbers, pages of interview notes.
And a whole bunch of observations swirling around in your head.
So how do we make sense of it all?
That's where data interpretation comes in.
It's about turning those raw data points into actionable insights.
That can actually inform your business decisions.
And the article has some really great advice on how to do this effectively.
Because this is where things start to get really exciting.
We're moving beyond just collecting information.
And starting to unlock those aha moments.
And one of the key things the article emphasizes is the importance of segmenting your data.
So instead of just looking at the big picture,
You break it down into smaller chunks.
so for example, instead of just looking at all your survey responses as a whole,
You could segment them by age, gender, location.
or even by how people answered specific questions.
And by doing that, you might start to see some interesting patterns emerge.
Like maybe you discover that younger customers are much more likely to be interested in a particular feature than older customers.
And that kind of insight can be super valuable for tailoring your marketing messages.
Or even developing new products that target specific customer segments.
Another thing the article talks about is the importance of looking for consistent trends and patterns in your data.
Because sometimes you'll see something interesting pop up.
But it's just a one-off thing.
It's those repeating patterns that really tell you something valuable about your audience or the market as a whole.
It's like separating the signal from the noise.
What are the key insights that keep showing up again and again?
Those are the ones you really want to pay attention to.
And one final point that I think is really important is this idea of validating your conclusions with multiple sources,
Yes. You don't want to base your entire strategy on just one piece of data.
especially if it comes from a single source.
You need to look for that confirmation from multiple sources before making any big decisions.
The author actually shares a story about how they once made a mistake by misinterpreting data from a single source.
Oh no, what happened?
They thought they were seeing a trend that actually turned out to be an anomaly.
Ouch. I bet that was a tough lesson to learn.
It was. But they learned their lesson the hard way.
And now they make a point of cross-referencing data and looking for confirmation from multiple sources.
Before making any big decisions.
That's a great reminder that even the most experienced researchers can make mistakes.
And it's always better to err on the side of caution.
So we've gathered our data, we've analyzed it, we've interpreted it.
And now comes the most important part.
What do we do with all these amazing insights?
This is where the rubber meets the road.
All the research in the world is useless if it just sits there gathering dust on a shelf.
It's about taking action.
It's about using these insights to make real changes to your business.
Whether that's tweaking your products, refining your marketing messages, improving your customer service.
Or even pivoting your entire business strategy.
And the article gives some great guidance on how to actually implement these changes effectively.
One thing they suggest is revisiting your business plan in light of the new data you've gathered.
It's like giving your business plan a fresh coat of paint.
You're looking at your goals, your target audience, your value proposition, your marketing strategy.
All through the lens of these new insights.
Exactly. It's about making sure your business is aligned with the current market realities.
And customer expectations.
And another tip they offer is to iterate and test changes gradually.
Don't try to overhaul everything at once.
Start small, make incremental changes, see what works.
It's a much more agile and responsive approach to change management.
And finally, never underestimate the power of communication.
Let your team and your stakeholders know what's changing and why.
Transparency is so important.
When people understand the rationale behind the decisions you're making, they're much more likely to be on board.
And support those changes.
The author talks about how they've seen firsthand how implementing changes based on market research has led to better product launches, more effective marketing campaigns.
And stronger customer relationships.
It's proof that when you ground your decisions in data and insights, you're much more likely to see positive results.
So far, we've covered a ton of ground. We've talked about competitive analysis, observational research, data interpretation.
And the importance of taking action.
But there's one more crucial aspect of market research that we need to discuss.
And that's the idea of ongoing research.
Market research isn't a one-time project.
It's a continuous journey of discovery.
So stay tuned because next we're going to dive into why that is.
And how to make market research an integral part of your business.
So grab your notebooks and get ready to level up your research game.
Okay, so we've talked about all these amazing market research techniques.
From surveys to focus groups to online tools to just plain old observation.
We've even gotten a little sneaky with the competition.
Ethically, of course.
Always. But here's a question. Is market research a one-and-done kind of thing?
Ooh, that's a good one. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong.
They treat it like a project, they check it off their list, and then they move on.
But the thing is, the market is constantly changing. Your customers are always evolving, and your competitors are never standing still.
So it's not enough to just do a little research up front and then call it a day.
You've got to make it an ongoing
A
process.
continuous journey of discovery.
Exactly. And that's actually one of the key takeaways from this article.
It's not just a project.
It's a lifestyle.
Market research is a lifestyle. I love it.
So true, though. Right. If you're only checking in with your customers or analyzing your competition once a year, you're missing out on so much valuable information.
Totally. Think about all the changes that can happen in a year.
New trends emerge, customer preferences shift, new technologies pop up.
It's a whole new world out there.
You got to keep your finger on the pulse if you want to stay relevant and competitive.
So how do we actually make market research an ongoing part of our business? What does that look like in practice?
Well, the article has some great suggestions. One thing they recommend is setting up a system for tracking key metrics and trends.
Okay, so like using tools like Google Analytics to monitor your website traffic.
Exactly. You can see how people are interacting with your site, what pages they're visiting, where they're dropping off.
It's like having X-ray vision into your customer journey.
Right. And then there are social media listening tools, like we talked about earlier, that can track brand mentions and sentiment.
So you get a sense of what people are saying about your brand online.
It's like having a dashboard that gives you a constant stream of insights.
I love that. Now, another thing the article suggests is to build regular surveys and interviews into your schedule.
You don't have to do those massive, in-depth research projects all the time.
Keep it light, keep it frequent.
Exactly. Even a short email survey sent out to your customers once a quarter can give you some really valuable feedback.
Or you could schedule a few quick customer interviews each month.
I find that even just a 15-minute conversation with a customer can spark a ton of new ideas.
It's all about staying connected to your audience, understanding their needs, and making sure you're still meeting those needs as they evolve.
And let's not forget about keeping tabs on industry trends and what your competitors are doing.
Right. Got to keep an eye on the competition.
That means staying up to date on industry news and publications, attending conferences and webinars, maybe even setting up Google alerts for your competitors.
Ooh, good tip.
You want to see what they're up to, what they're launching, what they're talking about.
So it's all about being a lifelong learner.
Absolutely. The market is always changing, and the most successful businesses are the ones that are constantly learning, adapting, and evolving.
And you know what else I love about this article?
What's that?
It really drives home this point, that market research, when done well, doesn't just help you make better decisions.
It actually gives you a competitive edge.
It does. When you have that deep understanding of your market, your customers, your competition,
You're not just guessing anymore.
you're making strategic, data-driven decisions that put you ahead of the game.
And that's what it's all about.
It's not just about collecting data for the sake of collecting data.
It's about using that data to drive growth, to innovate, to create a truly successful business.
And on that note, I think we've officially reached the end of our deep dive.
We've covered so much ground.
From defining our objectives to choosing the right research methods,
To analyzing our data and turning it into actionable insights.
and we've explored a ton of amazing tools and resources along the way.
But most importantly, we've learned that market research isn't just a one-time project.
It's an ongoing process.
It's a journey of discovery,
It's a lifestyle.
a market research lifestyle.
I love it. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired and ready to put all this knowledge into practice.
Me too.
So if you're feeling the same way, we encourage you to check out the full article on Medium. We'll include a link in the show notes.
And be sure to share your thoughts with us on social media. We love hearing from our listeners.
What resonated with you? What you're planning to implement in your own businesses?
Let's keep this conversation going.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of your knowledge.
And remember, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So go out there and make your mark on the world.